Have you had the idea or desire for your podcast for a long time and you just haven't been able to pull the trigger? Well, today we're giving you the step-by-step on launching your first or your next podcast faster using my Season 0 strategy. Right here, right now. It's On Air Brands.
You are now tuned in to the On Air Brands podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the On Air Brands show. I am Todd Giannattasio along with my co-host Amber Fuhriman. Amber, what is going on?
What's up, Todd? I feel like, we only missed a week and I feel like I haven't seen you in forever. So I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, back from vacation. My hair's long and, trimmed my beard finally this morning. I was like looking very scruffy, but I'm back.
It looks like you guys had
go.
fun though.
Yeah, it was good. Vacations are different once you have kids because I used to go on vacation to the beach and come back rested, recharged. And when we got home from vacation, I'm like, all right, I'm ready for vacation now.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, I don't have kids, but I definitely, as a business owner, I think I was telling somebody about this at a networking event last night. When I was in the service industry and you went on vacation, it was cool because you came home and every day was the same. Now you go on vacation and the world keeps going without you and your businesses need you. So it all adds up. Yeah. So I have a very real question for you. How much did you actually not work on your vacation? Did you have no work days?
No. I probably worked 2 to 3 hours a day. But
that's good.
It was, that was a lot less than last year. So we're making progress.
That's awesome. Yeah. I'm always curious to know what the people in my circle consider a vacation.
Yeah. Well, it's also with us, it's one of us is at the beach with the 5-year-old but for the afternoon, the 2-year-old naps. So someone has to, just be sitting in the house with a sleeping baby. So that gave both of us opportunity to do some work. And then, post nap time, luckily my wife is also an entrepreneur. So she's antsy to get into her stuff too. So there's no resentment between us when we're hey, I need to hop on and do some work,
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really interesting is what's popping in my head is that there's no right or wrong way to do this whole business parenting thing, which is really cool because we're going to talk about how there's no right or wrong way to, do your podcast, but you've got some great suggestions that I wish I would have taken with your Season 0. So I'm excited to hear those. I'm excited to hear those.
Yeah. So let's start off with what was your experience when you first started your podcast, which is now 200 plus episodes deep, right? So now how you do 2 a week. So I'm not good at math. How long ago did you start time wise?
August of 2019, 2 years ago.
All right. So August of 2019, Amber has this idea. How long did you want to have your podcast?
So I made a commitment for 2 years. I made a commitment
that before August, how long were you I should have a podcast?
Geez. So for me, it was shorter.
Okay.
Because I didn't know that podcasts were a thing.
Okay. Yeah.
And what I will say is that the desire to share my message went on for at least 3 years before that.
Yeah.
Feeling like I had something to say, not knowing how to get it out there. I had the desire to start a blog. Mm-hmm. And then I wrote a blog and realized that shit's awful. Yeah. So there was a lot. So I think that podcast wise, it was shorter, but the idea that you have a message to share and a reason to share it, that was a long time. Yeah. How about you? How long did it take you to start your first podcast
I've had several iterations of shows and for different businesses and partnerships. And I think the first one I did was I'll call it internal customer facing, not public video show that we did for Propelify a few years ago. And it was we had an idea and I did it. I don't know. Within 1 month, we had the first episode streaming and it was only a matter of coordinating a schedule in order to do the first interview. And the way that we did that was with this approach, which I've now kind of dubbed Season 0, where yes, look, and trust me, like I geek out on like the details of all types of marketing stuff and show stuff and all this stuff. Like, oh, well, what kind of graphics should we have in our lower third? Do we need audio intros, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. Oh, you could get cool voiceovers over here for super cheap, or you could get people. Oh, what if we did an impression of like a Morgan Freeman impression person to do, like all these kind of crazy ideas that are awesome. But when you get like so overwhelmed with those types of things, it makes a gigantic task list that you don't even want to start working on. And your podcast is on the other end of this unnecessarily long list, where in reality, what I did was, I don't remember off the top of my head what software we used at the time. Might have been Ecamm. Things were different 4 or 5 years ago when we did this. But basically in today's world, it was, who's an awesome person who I could riff on this topic with for 30 minutes? Let me see when they're available to hop on Zoom. We're going to record it, and that's going to be our show. And that was how I got started. That was what we did for the Propelify expert interview series. And that's what we did for our Zeotag show. That's what I did for my Growth Suite show. It was like, all right, these are conversations that I want to have. These are people who I will have good conversations with. Like, let me get them in the calendar. We'll record our video. Like, just like we're like, hey, we haven't talked in a while. Like, let's hop on Zoom and shoot the shit for a half hour and catch up, but doing it in a practical way and just having a little bit of intentionality behind like, hey, let's make sure that there's some valuable tips in this discussion, not just us ranting or whatever. And I think
it's really interesting that you mentioned that. And one of the most powerful things about that, I think, is how intimidating it is to record on your own for the first time. Yeah. And I don't think that I really understood that, because my first few episodes were guest episodes, but I was driving the conversation. Yeah. But when I first did my first solo episode, which if you look at the release schedule, it looks like my solo episode came first. But I had recorded 7 or 8 guest episodes by then. Yeah. And so you have this person to go out. You're the host, right, but you have this person you're highlighting. I think that's interesting. When you're the host of a podcast, you're not really the spotlight of that podcast. If you're doing it right, you're not the spotlight. Your guest is. But then you have this solo episode and you're like, holy crap, okay, people might hear me talk. What the hell was I thinking? So
you bring up a good point too, because there's also an art of like, if you're launching a show for your business, because obviously like the intention behind it is to help the business in some capacity. And so if you do want the show to help you attract clients or customers, you can't just put the guests in the spotlight and you be a host and only play that role. Like, you do need to be able, there is an art to massaging the conversation where your guest is the featured person, but you're still adding in your value in the conversation so that, it doesn't look like you're just like someone asking questions, but you are an expert on the topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that would be a great topic for another episode. Let me jot that down here on my notes.
In case you guys are wondering, this is how we plan our podcast. Yeah. Todd just take notes and then I show up. So thanks for that. No, I think that there's so many, we were talking about this in the planning meeting that we had, about the fact that we both have successful shows. You've had multiple successful iterations of a show. And yet, if you looked at how we do things, neither of us did things the same. I can look at some of the things that you did and think, man, I can see the value in that. And one of the huge things that I was mentioning in this idea of a season 0 was my first few, I can't talk. My first few episodes were horrible. I think I mentioned this in a prior episode that my most listened to episode even today is an episode where
it wasn't like the microphone wasn't on or something.
Yeah, my mic wasn't selected. And I was going off of my laptop mic, and I had an old laptop that had a fan that was going like crazy the entire time. And so and I'm in a room that's hardwood floors and an open floor plan. So you take all the things that they tell you not to do as a podcaster and put them in this one episode. And that's the episode people listen to the most, which still kills me, which is proof that content can override quality. That's absolutely right. I just really wish that I wish it would just go away.
Well, and that's really the basis of the season 0 is recognizing that it's the substance of the content that really makes the difference, and that's what matters. But also, it's about giving yourself permission to just get started. And when you call it season 0, it almost in itself of the name, like, hey, welcome to Grow Sweet TV season 0, episode 2, or whatever. Like, it even tells the audience, it's almost like beta software, right? Like, hey, like, this is really cool, but like, it's called beta, so if anything messes up, like,
Yeah, exactly.
don't yell at
blame
us.
me.
And
There's and there's something else from a marketing standpoint, which, most of us don't start our podcast with marketing in mind. Some of us do. When you know Todd, you do. When you meet Todd later, you're like, I knew having a podcast was a good idea. See, I knew it would come to this eventually. But there's a lot of people like myself who start your podcast for a passion project, and you just want to get your voice out there, share your message. One of the reasons I wish I had seasons, I've never had seasons.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons I wish I had seasons is because now that my book is about to come out, I have chapters in my book, and your seasons of a podcast could coincide with the chapters of a book, and it would look almost like this intentional marketing strategy with each season of your podcast,
which
right?
then also could line up with the online course where each chapter is a module, right? Like,
so I would say that, and there's nothing that says you start your podcast one way, you have to finish it that way, right? Like they're not carved in stone.
Yeah. Which is also another reason I like the idea of seasons, because then it gives you a clear place where you can say, even if you don't have a committed, like, hey, season 2 is going to be X episodes, but you can say, hey, that was season 2. Season 3 is a different format or a different style or whatever it is.
Yeah. There's so many different things. The season 0 has the approach of understand my stuff is going to be imperfect and I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then I had the approach of, okay, I need somebody to edit my stuff. And all I want to do is talk. Like, I would literally talk into a microphone, upload it to Dropbox, send it to my editor, and I wouldn't listen to it until it was released.
Yeah.
Because if I listened to it, I would tell him not to post it.
Yeah.
Which there's so much that we're going to talk about that goes into that mindset thing of why we don't
How
post.
much of that too? Because like right now we're live and you sound great. Now, you started a couple of years ago, so was it that it was the wood floor, it was the fan on the laptop? But like right now, I personally don't feel the need to have it overly produced or send to an editor, right? Like, I feel like, I know Rob does touches things up after the fact here before it goes into the platforms. But like, as we're streaming live, it just is what it is. And I'm comfortable with that. But it's also because honestly, my room could be way better, but I do have some of these pads on the walls. I have a decent mic, and happens to be quiet today because now that my wife is getting back to work and the kids are taken care of during the day, where, it's not an animal house here. But like, was that still, do you still feel that same? Do you think you would still feel that same way today getting started if you just had the rug on the floor and and the mic in front of you versus what you
if
had?
I had the experiences? Is that what you're asking? Like,
was the issue that like it technically, like, it actually sounded bad because it sounded echoey to you and you were like, I can't listen to it, it needs to be edited? Or were you just like, I need it to be edited regardless of what it sounds like, because you felt the need that a podcast had to be edited?
Yeah, I think it was a misconception about what a podcast should be. Now I live stream my episodes to my private Facebook group, both my solo episodes and my real ones. And I would say that, so much of what we're talking about with this season 0 is tactical and marketing, but so much of it is also mindset of be imperfect and give yourself that reason to be imperfect. And if you are that person that says, I think my stuff needs to be perfect, I know this is going to sound counterintuitive, but the best thing you can do is live stream it.
Yeah.
Because if you are putting it out there and it's out there, you're less likely to sit there and focus on mistakes. My first episodes, when I was doing solo episodes, it took me 3 hours to record a 30-minute solo episode that then got cut down to maybe 20 minutes because of the ums and the likes and all the stuff I used to have my editor take out, because I would say, oh my gosh, I could have said that better. Let me rewind it and go do it. And then because if you guys haven't figured this out, I used to be a perfectionist. So I would used to be, I'm less of a perfectionist. I'm in recovery, right? I would pre-edit my audio before I would send it to him in the later parts of my episode. So I would go through, I wouldn't listen to it, but I would go through and I would look for dead space. And I would pre-cut out the dead space before I would send it to him so that I didn't feel as unorganized as I thought I was.
Is this like the concept? My wife, we're going to hire a cleaning lady. And
I pre-clean my house. Yes, if that's what you're asking.
Why? Yeah, like why are we paying this person to come if you're cleaning the house before she gets here? Like I don't understand it.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I do pre-clean my house. I pre-clean a lot of things. So to answer your question, I think that 2 years ago, I thought that anything you're putting out into the world is got to be perfect and polished. And, even the videos that were being put out, everybody else's cell phone video looked like it was a hell of a lot better than my cell phone video, right? I don't know how their cell phone video takes better videos than mine, but we always think somebody else is better than us. And so we think our stuff has to rise to this standard that doesn't exist because everybody else's stuff is imperfect too. What's really interesting about that question is the comment that I made about episode number 5, which is my most listened to episode, is that content was so vulnerable and it connected with people and the imperfection connected with people to the point that Miss Perfectionist over here re-recorded the content.
Yeah.
Like 10 episodes later and nobody listened. I'm like, no, this one's good. Go listen to this one.
Yeah. And then, the thing too, when we're looking at our own stuff versus someone else's, and as someone in marketing and part of, what we do is website projects and stuff, is when you're looking at your own show or listening to your own show, when you're looking at your own website and you sit down and you say, I am going to look at this critically to find what's wrong with it. You're just looking for random mistakes that don't necessarily matter to the outcome of what your goals are. However, when you go onto someone else's website because you Googled something that you were looking for, you visit their website, you read the info you need, or you buy the product you need, and then you leave, you didn't sit there nitpicking everything. So that your intention, even when you sit down to criticize yourself or judge yourself, that sounds negative, but like if you're sitting down to, review, to be to make improvements, you're doing so through a lens of let me look and find mistakes versus no one else is looking at your stuff that way. No one else is sitting down like a teacher grading a paper when they're looking at your website or listening to your show. You know what they're doing? They're cleaning the dishes. They're driving their car. They're in the grocery store, right? Like I was at the grocery store this morning listening to a podcast. So like if they said or like a few times, I didn't notice. If there was a dog barking in the background, I didn't notice, and like what my coach has mentioned to us that on his show, and he has millions of downloads, he's got a huge show and all that kind of stuff, and he'll tell us like, oh man, the podcast this week, the dogs just kept going crazy, blah blah blah. I'm like, literally did not notice once, like did not notice at all, and it didn't make a difference. So like if they were potentially heard on the microphone, I didn't even notice it.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk for just a second about what you do when you over polish stuff, right? You unintentionally cut the people that you're trying to talk to out of the equation. When you're hosting a podcast, you're doing it for mainly one of two reasons, either to change lives, to impact people, to share your story and make an impact, or to connect with people and cut that know, like, and trust factor down with knowledge and information for the purposes of promoting a business. Either one of those is an emotional attachment.
Those are two of the same thing, but anyway.
Exactly. Either one of those are emotional. People who think that they buy logically, you buy emotionally and then you justify logically. Yep. So what happens is the person that is up on stage in a podcast, in a video, whatever it is, that makes no mistakes and is perfect and has practiced and polished to the point that they make zero mistakes at all. I sit back as the listener and say, that's great. They're awesome. I could never do that. I could never relate to that. I can't know that person. They're better than I am.
Yeah.
Right. They're the person who says, the person who's like, crap, that's not what I meant to say. The person who laughs at themselves, the person who falls down on stage, literally or figuratively. You look at them and you're like, oh, I could do that. I need to connect with this person because I want to know how they did that.
Yeah. So and a lot of it is also subconscious too, right? Like I have one of my friends and we do some projects together once in a while, but I don't know off the top of my head right now, but he has tens of thousands, if not 100,000 followers on Instagram. He's a pretty, he has a strong platform, and some people might consider him an influencer. But the problem is he's actually put himself on a pedestal. And so he gets he gets engagement in terms of likes and comments or whatever. But when we try to run campaigns to drive business, he has these very polished and professional the content. He has a podcast, he does the lives, the whole shebang. But it's almost like he's we look at the TV, people on TV, they're in another world. This dude he's up here. He's in a different world. I know he said at the end, I could book a consultation with him, but I would never be able to talk with him, right? No way. We get this thing. And even think about authors, a lot of books in the back of the book, it's if you'd like to work with us in our firm, here's our website or whatever. And I'm never going to call Chris Voss and tell him I need help. Right. But that it's because he's on this pedestal, and that happens. And there's ways to balance that or figure it out, or it's just a different level of business and your business model changes. But back to what you're saying is, being real and authentic is going to resonate and connect with people better, even on a subconscious level, because then they're feeling ooh, I could have I feel real with this person. I feel like I could talk to this person, as opposed to, oh, that person is so good, I could never even have a free 30-minute strategy session with them, even though they told me I could on the end of their episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about this season 0 strategy. I want some specifics, because I know that there's somebody out there going, great, season 0 sounds great, but before I record, I got to have a mixer, and I need to know what camera I need to have, and I need to know what mic. So tell me, the person who's out there that says, I'm going to start my podcast, I'm going to start it now, I'm going to use season 0. We're going to do tips, tricks, equipments, all that stuff. But just from a season 0 standpoint, what do they need to start?
Yeah, season 0 is literally, we call it minimum viable. The goal here is to get you to record and publish. It's to get your muscles into action and familiar with having conversations that are recorded and hitting that publish button and putting things out. It will help you to clarify your voice, to figure out how you feel, what style kind of talking you want to do. And so all you need to do is have conversations with people that you record if you want to do interview style. So all you need is, what are 10 things I want to talk about that are relevant to my audience and my business? And who are potentially 10 people that I'm already friends with that I know will be a good conversation with me, to reach out and ask them to be guests on the show. Get on Zoom and record your Zoom. You can do this, the free Zoom, I don't know all the limitations now, is 30 or 45 minutes. So you could do an episode on a free Zoom account, go into a quiet room, put headphones on. Your webcam that came with your laptop or your desktop is totally fine. If you don't have one on your desktop, I don't know, I'm not a desktop person, but the $50, $70 webcam is totally acceptable. Headphones that came with your phone, totally acceptable, because the idea here is that you want to just get into the practice of having conversations that are recorded and hitting publish. This will give you the permission to let go of, well, we need a logo, we need a voiceover, we need intro music, we need this, we need that, I need to send them somewhere. Oh, we need, all those other things. They don't matter, because season 0 is where you're finding your voice and your message that your audience is going to be interested in. And so create that content and record it. And you don't even need to go through, I don't know the steps off the top of my head. Luckily, thank you, Rob, for being the person who puts this into, I think we just load it up into Anchor, and then that even makes it easy to go into all Apple, Spotify, etc. But
yeah, I have no idea. I think it's magic.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. We get off here and it's done. But all you need to do is record that video on Zoom and upload it to YouTube. And now it's on YouTube, and you have a video podcast on YouTube, and share that on your social media page. Send it out to your email list and ask for feedback. Say, hey, I'm launching. This is called season 0. There's going to be some ums and ahs. There's not a lot of bells and whistles here. I want to get to the core message of what's going to be beneficial to you guys as my audience. And I want to get used to doing this whole podcasting thing. Would love for you to listen and let me know what you think. Right. And there you have it. So it's free Zoom account, the webcam and headphones and microphone that came with your phone and laptop, record that, upload it to a free YouTube channel, put it on your social media pages, and send it to your email list, ask for feedback. And there you go. And I would say, commit to doing at least 10 of them, because the first couple, you're going to be fumbling around a little bit. Probably you want to get into a rhythm a little bit, and you want to just kind of create a habit and set yourself a timeline too. Like if you do these as recorded Zoom episodes, it's 30 minutes, right? It's a 30-minute block, and maybe block off another 30 minutes afterwards so that you can kind of write a little recap of what you talked about. But that's all you need to do. So say block off an hour in the calendar once a week, twice a week, or however you can coordinate it with the people you want to bring on as guests, and just get to work. Record the Zooms, upload them to YouTube, put that little description there, share it out, and ask for feedback. And that is your season 0 that will get you started. I
love it. I love it. So there's a couple things that I want to comment on from the standpoint of the person that more recently started her podcast 2 years ago. It took me a year to get my stuff in video. And I kept telling myself, I'm going to wait till I'm comfortable on audio, and then I'll be more comfortable on video. Let me share a secret with you guys. There is no universe where being more comfortable in audio makes you more comfortable on video. Like
this is a great topic. And you know, Josh Carey just posted this on Facebook. I don't know if he posted it yesterday or today. I saw it this morning, and you had already commented, but he said he was a guest on 2 different shows that used, and he didn't mention it, and I can't remember, but I've been on these shows too, where it's an audio only recording and you don't even see the person interviewing you. So like, forget about the show being on video. Just being able to talk with being able to see the person you're talking to makes a world of a difference. Like, as you know, if you guys are watching us, you know, on the live or recorded video versus the audio stream, like we are giving each other, you know, visual cues on like, okay, I'll back off, you take this, like whatever, back and forth. And like, if you're not on video when you're talking to someone, there's going to be more fumbling of the conversation than if you're on video.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be clear, like I would do all of my interviews video style, but I would never post it. So I wouldn't post the video on YouTube, wouldn't do anything there. And then a year in, I decided I was going to start this YouTube channel. And it was just as excruciating as it would have been in day one, except now people expected me to be better because I've been doing this for a year, right? So please just jump in. Yeah. You're never going to think, man, I look good on camera. I don't know if there's ever been a day that I've thought, man, that shot was great. Yeah. Like if you could think of the worst screenshots that Facebook finds for you and you're like, man, that's what I look like. Did you see time out for a second on relevant stuff? Did you see the screenshot of Matthew McConaughey on Zoom? Somebody turned it into a meme. It's the most awful picture of Matthew McConaughey on the planet. And it says, if this is what Matthew McConaughey looks like on a Zoom call, imagine what we all look like, right? So just know that there's not a person in the world that sits there and thinks like, man, this is great. We just learn to tune it out. Yeah. Start your video now. Yeah. And here's why I say this. Number one, because you're going to get more comfortable with it the more that you do it, just like you do with audio. If you're doing interviews and you're wanting to connect with people that are outside your influential reach at this point in time, I've found that being able to say, hey, look, this is what my team is going to do for you. They're going to take this video, they're going to cut it down into a couple of pieces of marketing content. We'll share that with you. It's going to be shared on social media. All of a sudden now you're providing value instead of just saying, hey, let me release this on my podcast to my very limited small audience. Because let's be real, when you start, you're going to have like 4 people listen to your podcast. Yeah. So there's so many ways that video helps. And I can't stress enough how much I wish I would have started video earlier in a season 0 format. And
you're totally right about the expectations. When you're getting started from scratch with season 0, it's like low expectations. But yeah, if you're 100 episodes in and you have and you've gotten really good at audio podcasting and people have come to expect this level of professionalism from your content, and then you come out on video and like you're sitting, this is one thing even for season 0, like don't sit on the edge of your bed with your bed behind you as the background, right? Like unless like your podcast is called like Pillow Talk or something like that, right? Like
please someone do this.
But like make sure you have a clean background, make sure you're just centered in front of the camera, your camera's at eye level. Right. It's not looking up your nose or down at like a double chin situation. Like just look straight into the camera, and have a clean background behind you. But if you do build an audience on audio only, yes, there's going to be some expectation if you say like, hey, new YouTube channel, we're getting started with this video, but they are going to have even a subconscious expectation that's a little higher than if you were just brand new getting started. So that's a great point on getting started with video right away, because one, the audience will be smaller and the expectations will be lower. So get comfortable creating good content, and just remember, focus on the conversations. That's what you want for season 0, valuable substance. And you can even use it, we mention all the time, even the people, I would say, do a handful of episodes with people you have an existing relationship with, because the conversations will be easier. But if you want to use this, you are way more likely to get meetings with people when you tell them, hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast talking about your area of expertise. That's how you can open those relationships. And so even again, like we've mentioned in several episodes before, without having a large audience, podcasts can have an immediate effect on your business by having the right guests come on your show and using that to create relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much that we could talk about in this.
Mm-hmm.
What I would love to do as we start to kind of wrap up, because I feel like you and I could talk about this all day long. What is one thing, I know you started with a season 0, I didn't. What is one thing that you wish that you would have done differently or known about a season 0 or about starting your podcast that you think is important for people to know?
I think one of the biggest hangups for me, and again, this is like a perfectionist type thing maybe, was doing intros for the episodes. So for the first dozen episodes, I was hopping on, I would use Ecamm and Skype, and hop on Skype with my guest, talk for 5 minutes, hit record, do the episode, end the episode, let them go. And then because I wanted the intro to match the episode, right? So I would record the episodes first, and then I'd spend some time writing out the recap and then record the intro. But like you mentioned about having the solo show, that became a hang up, because if I even had to take a pee break after recording the episode, doing that recap is out the window. And honestly, the secret, the last 2 episodes of this show aren't live yet on Apple yet, because I haven't done the descriptions. Because if I don't do them right away after the show, they don't get done for a long time. And then they get added to the task list, which becomes infinitely long, and things get pushed aside. So for me, when I was getting started, it hit me halfway through. And because one of my guests had his own show and we kind of bantered about it, was instead of recording the episode and then trying to come up with very great intro that I recorded on my own, I would just talk to the guest for a couple minutes, hit record, and say, hey, today I have Amber Fuhriman. We're talking about X, Y, and Z. Welcome to the show. And then I didn't have to spend that time afterwards. I didn't become a perfectionist. It's like you said before, doing live streams forces you to be more comfortable with what you're putting out, because it's going to be good enough anyway when you don't look at it with that critical lens we mentioned before.
Yeah, I love that. And I can second that. I used to do the whole episode. And then if I was lucky, I did the intro on that day. Most likely what would happen is because the only person I had on my team was an audio editor. And the audio editor would say, hey, where's the intro for this? And then 3 weeks later, I'm like, shit, what did we talk about?
Right. And then you have to re-listen.
And then you got to re-listen. So I definitely agree with that. Mine is a little maybe controversial, but I started my podcast on the advice of using an audio bumper. In the beginning, my name is the name of the guest, right? And you're listening to the More Than Corporate podcast. And the psychological idea behind that, I know there's a lot of people that still do this. The psychological idea behind that is that the more you have your guests saying your name, the more you borrow their influence, and that increases your brand credibility. And I did that for a long time, and
now when you say starting with the bumper, you mean literally on second 0 when you hit play, it was the guest saying
it would be, my name is Todd Giannattasio, and if you want to, and that's where it would start, right?
Which is real. You can go find that on her show, because I think I did do that.
You did do that, yeah. And what was interesting is in the very beginning, it might have had an impact. However, by episode 100, when you've got 100 guests that all said the same thing, you start to think, hey, maybe this is scripted, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing so what I switched to was having my team take a piece of the podcast out that they thought was powerful, put that in the very beginning, and then I go into introducing the guest, which is all live, right? And that shift made such a huge impact, because I think we forget as podcasters that the guest podcasts are not about us.
Yeah.
Like too often we make us the face of the podcast and the center of the podcast, but that podcast should be about your guest and highlighting your guest. And so having your guest talk at the beginning is more impactful than having them say your name, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I wish I would have done differently.
Yeah, and I do like with this show. I like the format. We start off and we say we give like a question on what. Hey, so we tell people if this is something interesting to you, listen through.
Here's why you should listen.
Right.
Yeah,
But I do also, as an alternative, I like the shows that do have that like 10 to 40-second clip in the beginning of the guest like dropping a value bomb. And then it's like, okay, this is what we're in for. I like that too. Those are two good ways to get started. But season 0, don't worry about editing out clips. Like just get started and say, hey, here's what we're talking about today. Here's my guest. We're going to hit X, Y, and Z bullets. Welcome to the show. Amber, tell us about yourself. Boom. That's how you get started with your season 0 episodes. And if you guys like this and you want more, or you're ready to take a season 1 approach, On Air Brands will help you produce your own show. So go to onairbrands.com for that. If you want some free resources or to check out our previous episodes, go to onairbrands.com/show. If you want to hear Amber's 200 plus episodes of her amazing podcast, morethancorporate.com. And we will catch you guys on the next episode.
You are now tuned in to the On Air Brands podcast.